My name is Elizabeth, and I never thought I would be betrayed by the very people who raised me. Betrayal in my mind belonged to strangers, lovers who lied, or friends who turned out to be snakes, but I was wrong. The worst kind of betrayal comes wrapped in the familiar faces of family, delivered with calm words and cold eyes. That truth hit me the day my parents sold the condo I had been renting from them, not to a stranger, but to my smug cousin Darren. They did it behind my back, without a whisper of warning, and handed me a deadline. 7 days to clear out, 7 days to lose the roof I thought was secure. 7 days to swallow the knife they'd driven into my chest. I remember standing in the kitchen of their big white colonial-style house in Charleston, South Carolina, the scent of lemon polish heavy in the air. My mother's pearl necklace gleamed against her blouse, her posture rigid, as if this were some business meeting instead of a conversation with her daughter. "Family helps family," she said, her tone cold, detached, rehearsed. Those words weren't meant to comfort me. They were meant to shut me down. My father stood beside her, silent as always, hiding behind his coffee mug, letting her cruelty carry the weight of the conversation. I stared at them, speechless at first, then the words burst out of me like broken glass. "You sold my home to Darren? Without even telling me? I've been paying you $1,200 a month. I thought I was helping you cover your bills. I thought I was part of this family." My voice cracked with rage, but my mother's eyes stayed as hard as polished stone. "You'll manage, Elizabeth," she replied, dismissing me with a flick of her manicured hand. "Darren needs it more. He's starting a family. You'll figure it out." It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the condescension. Darren, the cousin who strutted around family gatherings bragging about his supposed business ventures, always with that smug grin plastered across his face. Darren, who once borrowed $3,000 from my parents and never paid it back, who always seemed to fail upward. And now, thanks to their betrayal, he was rewarded again, while I was tossed aside like garbage. When I stormed out of their house that day, I wasn't just angry. I was seething with a fire I had never felt before. I gripped the steering wheel of my old Ford so tight my knuckles turned white as I drove back to my soon-to-be-lost condo. Every streetlight felt like a reminder that my time there was ticking down, every bump in the road a jolt to my wounded pride. I replayed my mother's words in my head, each repetition like gasoline on the flames inside me. Family helps family. But what about me? Wasn't I family? Or was I just a convenient source of rent money until Darren needed the property more? By the time I pulled into the driveway, my anger had crystallized into something sharper resolve. They thought I would just leave quietly, licking my wounds in some cheap apartment on the other side of town. They thought I would stay silent while Darren paraded around in my condo. They thought wrong. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly suspect, was that I had already made a call. A single phone call, but one that had the potential to unravel everything they had built for themselves. Weeks earlier, I'd learned something by accident. My parents had been renting out the basement of their own home as an apartment. It wasn't just illegal, it was a fire hazard, with no proper exit, no permits, no inspections. They were pulling in thousands of unreported dollars every month from it. At the time, I had filed that information away in the back of my mind, unsure of what to do with it. But betrayal has a way of sharpening memory, of turning forgotten details into weapons. The day they handed my condo to Darren was the day I sharpened that weapon and made my move. I called the city housing office, gave them the address, and laid out every detail I knew. I made my voice calm and professional, but inside I was grinning like a wolf. My parents had taken something from me, so I was going to take something from them, something they never thought they'd lose. As I hung up the phone, a strange calm washed over me. For the first time since hearing the news, I didn't feel powerless. I felt dangerous. My parents thought they'd played me like a fool, but the game had only just begun. I wasn't going to walk away with nothing. No, I was going to make sure their empire of lies came crashing down around them, brick by brick, dollar by dollar. That night, as I packed boxes in my condo, I didn't cry. Instead, I thought of Darren. I imagined his smug little smile when he moved into my place, probably boasting about how he'd negotiated with my parents. I imagined him bringing women over, bragging about how he was building wealth, how the condo was his big step forward. The thought made my blood boil, but it also fueled me. Darren wasn't just going to live in my condo, he was going to regret ever stepping foot into it. I would find a way to crush him too, just as surely as I would crush my parents' secret rental business. For years, I had been the dutiful daughter, the one who never made too much trouble, who worked hard, paid her bills, and tried to do the right thing, but they had taken advantage of that. They mistook my kindness for weakness. They thought I would never fight back. That night, staring at the half-empty condo I would soon be forced to leave, I made myself a promise. I would never be that woman again. I would be the storm they never saw coming. So, while my parents slept soundly in their pristine white house, believing they had secured Darren's future and discarded me, I was already planning their downfall. Every box I taped shut, every item I packed was another piece of fuel for the fire inside me. I didn't just want justice anymore, I wanted revenge. Aggressive, merciless revenge that would leave them stunned and scrambling, unable to recover from the wreckage I would bring. And the best part? They would never see it coming because they believed I was weak. They believed I was just their daughter, but my name is Elizabeth. And they were about to learn exactly what happens when you push me too far. I drove my old black Ford south, the kind of drive where the road feels like an escape route and a weapon at the same time. The Charleston air clung to me with its humidity, thick and suffocating. But every mile I put between myself and my parents' White House gave me a little more room to breathe. My destination was Savannah, Georgia, a city with history carved into its cobblestone streets and oak trees draped in Spanish moss like veils over secrets. It was also the home of my best friend, Monica, the one person in this world who never treated me like I was disposable. Monica always said I had a streak of fire in me. She claimed she could see it when I was quiet, when my jaw clenched in the middle of family dinners, when I swallowed the words I wanted to spit at my smug cousin Darren or my mother's icy condescension. "You'll burn the world down someday, Liz," she'd laugh. "All you need is the match." She was right. My parents' betrayal wasn't just a spark, it was a wildfire, and by the time I parked in front of her old brick townhouse, I was ready to let it consume everything. She greeted me with open arms, pulling me into the comfort of her kitchen, where the scent of coffee and garlic still lingered from whatever meal she had cooked earlier. She poured us each a glass of red wine and settled across from me at the small wooden table, her green eyes locked on mine. "Tell me everything," she said, her tone low and serious. And I did. I told her about the condo, about Darren's smug smirk, about my mother's words, "family helps family," that still rang in my ears like a curse. I told her about the secret basement rental, the illegal cash, the years of silence I had swallowed like poison. Monica leaned forward, her expression shifting from sympathy to something darker. A grin spread across her face, slow and wicked. "Elizabeth, they've underestimated you. They've always underestimated you. You can use that. Don't just burn them, bury them." The words sank into me like iron weights anchoring me to a new reality. She was right. This wasn't about simply lashing out or crying into my wine. This was about strategy, about making them pay so dearly they'd never forget what they did to me. That night, as the hours stretched long and the bottle emptied, we sketched out the beginnings of a plan. Step 1 was already in motion, the call I had made to the city about the illegal basement apartment. My parents had no idea that while they were celebrating Darren's new condo, inspectors were probably already scheduling their visit. That would be the first crack in their perfect facade. But step 2, that was where the real destruction would begin. We turned our attention to Darren. He was the golden boy in my parents' eyes, their success story, their pride. He loved to brag about his business ventures, flashing expensive toys, a new watch here, a designer suit there like trophies. But I knew Darren. I knew he didn't have the brains or the discipline to run anything successfully. His Rolex wasn't a sign of wealth. It was a mask, hiding debt, fraud, or worse. "I want to tear him apart," I said, my voice steady. "I want to expose him for the parasite he is. If I can ruin Darren, I ruin the whole foundation my parents think they're building." Monica nodded approvingly. "Then start digging. Everyone leaves a trail, especially people like Darren." The next morning, I emptied $400 from my dwindling savings and wired it to a private investigator in Atlanta. His name was Charles Kane, and he came highly recommended by one of Monica's acquaintances. He specialized in financial backgrounds, business fraud, and the kind of dirt people prayed would never surface. When I explained Darren's smug demeanor and suspicious wealth, Charles chuckled over the phone. Sounds like the type who's hiding more than one skeleton. I'll find them for you. Give me a week. A week. 7 days to either confirm my suspicions or crush them. 7 days to sharpen the knife. I was planning to drive into Darren's perfect little life. Every dollar I spent wasn't just money leaving my pocket. It was gasoline poured on the fire of my anger. Fuel for the revenge I was determined to carry out. But waiting wasn't my strong suit. I couldn't sit idle while the storm brewed, so I started my own investigation. I logged into social media, combed through Darren's photos, his posts, his tagged locations. He was careless, broadcasting his life like a man desperate for validation. There he was in Miami, holding a drink that probably cost more than my weekly groceries. There he was in New York, pretending to network with businessmen who likely couldn't pick him out of a crowd. And there he was in Atlanta, at a flashy nightclub, with women clinging to his arm and his Rolex glinting under the neon lights. The aggression inside me only deepened with every post I saw. Darren wasn't just smug, he was reckless, arrogant, flaunting a lifestyle he couldn't possibly afford. I screenshotted everything, cataloged every suspicious detail, every slip of arrogance that might be used against him. At night, lying on Monica's couch, I fantasized about the fallout. I imagined Darren's face when his debts came crashing down on him, when the lies he'd spun around my parents unraveled. I imagined my mother's voice, no longer cold and dismissive, but trembling with the realization that she had bet on the wrong horse, that she had thrown away her daughter for a fraud. My revenge wasn't just about Darren, it was about all of them. My parents, their smug little empire of lies, their selective loyalty, their cruel dismissal of me. They thought they had stripped me of everything, but what they had really done was free me from any obligation to protect them. Now I was unleashed, and I wasn't going to stop until they were choking on the consequences of their own arrogance. One evening, as Monica and I sat on her porch watching the streetlights flicker on, she asked me, "What happens if the investigator doesn't find anything? What if Darren is actually clean?" I turned to her, my expression hard, my voice sharp as a blade. "Then I'll dig deeper myself. Everyone has dirt, Monica. And if I can't find it, I'll make sure he creates it." People like Darren always trip over their own egos eventually. All I have to do is push him. She raised her glass to me, a toast to the storm I was becoming. "To pushing him," she said. And I drank to that. Because this wasn't just about reclaiming what I'd lost, it was about sending a message. No one betrays me and walks away untouched. No one takes from me and escapes unscarred. Darren, my parents, the whole rotten family tree, they were all going to feel the weight of my wrath. And when the investigator called with the results, I knew I'd be ready. While I waited for the investigator's report, I found myself unable to sit still. My anger was a restless thing, pacing inside me like a caged animal. Monica told me to give it time, that Charles Kane would dig up what I needed on Darren, but patience has never been my strength. I needed to move, to breathe somewhere that didn't carry the stench of betrayal, somewhere that could sharpen my resolve instead of suffocating me in the weight of what had been taken. That's how I ended up in Switzerland, Florida. I had never been there before, truthfully. I hadn't even known it existed until I pulled up the map one sleepless night and let my eyes fall on the name, Switzerland, not the country. Of course, but the sound of it stirred something in me. Switzerland meant neutrality, they said. But neutrality was just a mask for power, wasn't it? A country that had survived centuries of wars by standing still while the world tore itself apart. Calm on the surface, steel underneath. That was the lesson I needed. When I arrived, the town was small and unassuming, a stretch of green fields, winding roads, and the St. John's River cutting silently alongside it. I stood at the water's edge, the air hot and heavy, the cicadas buzzing like electricity in the trees. The river looked calm, deceptively so, but I knew what currents lay beneath calm waters, just like I knew what currents swirled beneath my own silence. I stared out over that river and whispered to myself, I will be calm on the surface, and steel underneath. It wasn't peace I was seeking, it was strategy. I didn't want to lash out blindly. Revenge wasn't about screaming into the void. It was about precision, timing, the kind of strike that left your enemies wondering how they hadn't seen it coming. Switzerland reminded me of that. My parents thought they had outmaneuvered me. Darren thought he was untouchable. But I was about to show them what it meant to underestimate me. For 2 days I stayed in a run-down motel, the kind of place where the walls smelled faintly of mildew and the sheets felt older than the building itself. I didn't care. I wasn't there for comfort, I was there to brood, to sharpen myself into a weapon. I walked through the small town, letting its quiet become the backdrop to my rage. I thought of Darren, of his smug grin, as he slid his key into the condo door that should have been mine. I thought of my mother, pearl earrings flashing as she told me coldly, family helps family. I thought of my father, cowardly in his silence. Every memory became another stone in the wall of my anger. But anger alone wasn't enough. Anger without action was just wasted fire. And then on the third morning my phone rang. It was Charles Kane. "Elizabeth," he said, his voice steady, professional. "I've got what you wanted. Darren's been lying through his teeth. The man's drowning in debt. $75,000 in unpaid loans, most of it spread across predatory lenders. And that's not the worst of it. He's been forging signatures on contracts for his so-called business. If the right people see this, he's not just in trouble, he's facing criminal charges." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The words slammed into me like a wave, not because I was surprised, but because I was vindicated. I had been right all along. Darren's arrogance wasn't built on success, it was built on rot, on lies, on debt stacked so high it was a wonder he could stand at all. "Send me everything," I said, my voice low, dangerous. "You got it, but Elizabeth." Charles hesitated. "With evidence like this, you could ruin him completely. Are you sure you want to go that far?" I almost laughed. "Charles, I'm just getting started." When I hung up the phone, a thrill ran through me. I had leverage, now real leverage. I could expose Darren, drag him through the mud, watch him lose everything he had conned his way into. Or I could play it quieter, twist the knife slowly, let him squirm under the weight of knowing I held his future in my hands. Both options intoxicated me. That night, I sat on the edge of the motel bed, Charles's report spread out before me. Page after page of Darren's sins, unpaid balances, threatening letters from creditors, falsified documents, proof of the hollow man he truly was. I traced my finger down the list of debts like I was caressing a treasure map. This was my gold, not coins or bars, but secrets, weapons I could use to shatter him. The aggression inside me sharpened into something colder, more dangerous. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was calculating. Darren had thought he won when he stepped into my condo. My parents thought they had secured their precious family's future. But I held the detonator now, and all I had to do was decide how and when to press the button. I thought back to the river, its calm surface hiding the currents underneath. That was me now. Outwardly, I would smile, play the dutiful daughter if I had to, let Darren preen like the fool he was. But beneath that mask, I would be pulling strings, setting traps, preparing the downfall they would never see coming. Revenge wasn't about rushing, it was about savoring. It was about watching the cracks spread before the whole structure collapsed. I wanted Darren to feel every moment of his unraveling, wanted him to taste the fear of debt collectors, the humiliation of exposure, the desperation of knowing his lies had finally caught up with him. I wanted my parents to see their golden boy tarnish before their eyes, to choke on the realization that they had betrayed their daughter for a fraud. And oh, I wanted Darren to squirm. As I packed up the report and slid it into my bag, I felt a calm I hadn't known in weeks. Switzerland had taught me its lesson. Calm on the surface, steel underneath. I was ready now. Ready to strike, ready to turn the tide. My parents and Darren had thought they could strip me of everything. But they had only given me the one thing more powerful than money or property. They had given me motive. And with that motive, I would carve my revenge into their lives, so deep they would never recover. The call from the city inspector came sooner than I expected. I was still in Switzerland, Florida, sipping bitter motel coffee when the voice on the other end told me they'd already sent a team to my parents' house. The words hit me like music. Violations confirmed, property cited, hefty fines forthcoming. I closed my eyes and savored the sound of justice grinding its teeth. For years, my parents had lorded their respectability over me, flaunting their house as if it were a palace, their carefully curated image as if they were royalty. But now, that pristine white colonial in Charleston had been branded with a scarlet letter of its own making. The city had discovered everything: the illegal basement unit, the missing permits, the fire hazards. They weren't just fined, they were threatened with legal action if the space wasn't vacated and rebuilt to code. Thousands of dollars gone, just like that. When I drove back to Charleston a few days later, I made a point of passing their house. The lawn was still immaculate, the shutters still perfect, but something had changed. My father was on the porch, shoulders slumped, staring at a stack of papers he held like they were poison. For the first time in my life, he didn't look like the man who thought he controlled everything. He looked small. And God, it felt good. But my revenge wasn't complete. Not yet. My parents' empire of lies was crumbling, yes. But Darren still strutted around with my condo key in his pocket, still smirking as if the world bent to his will. And I wasn't going to rest until that smirk was wiped clean from his face. I set the meeting myself. Miami, a public cafe on a busy street, where Darren's arrogance would have no room to breathe. I chose Miami because it was his favorite place to flaunt his hollow wealth. Let him think it was just another chance to boast, another stage for his pathetic performance. When he arrived, he looked exactly as I expected: expensive suit, watch gleaming, sunglasses perched on his head like he was some celebrity. He leaned down to kiss my cheek, grinning as if nothing had ever happened. "Liz, good to see you. I was surprised you called." I didn't smile back. Instead, I slid a plain manila envelope across the table. "Open it." His grin faltered. He flipped it open, pulled out the stack of papers, and began to read. It didn't take long for the blood to drain from his face. The unpaid debts, the forged contracts, the creditors circling like vultures, it was all there, black and white, proof of his downfall. His hands trembled slightly as he set the papers back down. "Elizabeth, you wouldn't—" "Oh, I would," I whispered, leaning in so only he could hear the venom in my voice. "Unless you pay me back every cent I ever gave my parents for that condo, plus interest." He swallowed hard, his confidence slipping with every passing second. That's a lot of money." I let a cruel smile tug at my lips. $50,000. "You wire it to me by the end of the week, or these documents find their way to the police, to your business partners, to anyone who's ever trusted you. And when they're finished tearing you apart, you'll wish you had just handed me the keys to that condo instead." The aggression in my voice left no room for negotiation. Darren knew it. I watched his arrogance collapse in real time, like a building imploding under its own corruption. For once, the smug grin was gone. For once, I was the one holding the power. He nodded quickly, too quickly. "Fine, I'll get it to you. Just keep this between us." "Tick-tock, cousin," I said, standing to leave. "The clock is already running." By the end of that week, the money was in my account. $50,000. Blood money, guilt money, I didn't care what name it wore. It was mine now, my compensation for every rent check, every lie, every betrayal. Money wasn't the real prize, though. The real prize was watching Darren's swagger vanish, knowing he would live in fear of me exposing him. As for my parents, the city fines bled them dry. They lost their precious basement income, their comfort, their smug superiority. My mother no longer had the energy to lecture me, not when she was too busy scrambling to patch the holes in their finances. My father, the man who had always puffed out his chest like a king, now looked pale and diminished, a man stripped of his throne. I didn't speak to them again. There was nothing left to say. They had chosen Darren over me, chosen betrayal over loyalty, and they had paid the price. My silence was its own punishment, a wound they could never quite close. When I looked at my bank account, when I thought of Darren's hollow eyes across that cafe table, when I pictured my parents' house under the weight of city inspectors, I felt something powerful surge through me. Victory, freedom, gold. Because gold doesn't always shine in coins or jewelry. Sometimes gold is the power of taking back what was stolen. Gold is the silence of enemies brought low, the glimmer in your own eyes when you finally win. And I, Elizabeth, had won. But don't mistake this for closure. Closure is for those who want to bury the past and move on. I don't want closure. I want the memory of this revenge to live forever, a monument to the day I stopped being their victim and became their reckoning. If they thought betrayal would break me, they were fools. Betrayal made me sharper, stronger, hungrier. They gave me motive, and I used it to carve my vengeance into their lives. Now, they'll never forget my name. My name is Elizabeth. And I am not finished yet.